Hey friends, Liz here to invite you to check out our Patreon. That's where we publish extra episodes every other week, and that's also where we will continue any series we're reading. So if you liked our coverage of ACOTAR, Guild, High Mountain Court, or Fourth Wing, check out our Patreon to continue those series along with us. We also let you know what we're reading each month in advance in case you want to read along with us too. There might be a few other surprises throughout the year for our patrons as well. You can get all of this for just $3 a month, so check it out and we would really appreciate the support. Anyway, on to today's episode.
Welcome to Your Safe Space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks is dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand the jokes in the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. I'm Katie, and I need it to make sense.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical. As always, we start every episode with 3 things. The first is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. Also, we do use foul language and talk a lot about sex. If you have sensitivity to any of this, please give this episode a skip.
Secondly, we talk about books. The whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you plan to read this book and don't want something spoiled right now, don't listen to this episode.
Lastly, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. The views expressed in our discussion are our opinion, and we absolutely don't want to diminish the work and the talent of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes.
I think we should get into the story because I'm not sure that we're going to have a whole lot to talk about otherwise.
No, you're right. Let's get into the story. So, Katie, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about part 2 of Earth Boys Are Easy by Rochelle, and we are going to be covering chapters 22 through the end, and then after that we will do our ratings. So let's jump into it. And full disclosure, I'm not going to say full disclosure. So let's jump into it. So the last we left our 2 heroes, Ziggy and Micah, were hot on the trail of another Stellarian at this kind of like rest stop club bar situation. And they're tracking this guy for no other reason than the fact that he showed up in a bodysuit, not in armor. So they're like, this guy has to be a fugitive. Cool.
So let's go. Let's follow him.
Yeah, let's ruin this guy's day.
Right.
So they track this person to a private room, and this is the type of room that you would use to pay for sex. And they catch this being in the act of taking over another being. And this is a pair of aliens called Kaylas that are born as twins but share a consciousness, and they're described as being physically connected, and they're the ones with like the big anime eyes and soft velvety skin and kind of like humanoid features, but that's about as much information we get. We don't even get how they're physically connected, which I thought was a huge miss.
It was a huge miss because that changes the dynamic so much. Are they conjoined twins? Are they nebulous? Are they avatar linked? I need to know for everything else to make sense.
Yeah. And since we didn't get that information, I did just end up going with the avatar link, like through the tails, because that's the only way it makes sense, the way that they move through the room. But they are very much written like the author kind of forgot that they were supposed to be physically connected.
Yep.
Whoops. Anyway, Ziggy engages the Stellarian and this being that he's trying to take over in battle. And basically he like forces them out of this conjoined twin situation. So like this dude's trying to take over these aliens and Ziggy's like, nope, and like forces him to not do that. So Micah has the job of trying to trap the Stellarian in question with the tractor beam from Ziggy's cube. But Micah gets distracted by the would-be meat suit Kalas because he's trying to get them to safety, right? And he eventually does do the job of catching the Stellarian in the tractor beam, but Zig is like super pissed that Micah left his post essentially. So Micah claps back that he was trying to get the other alien to safety, and he says, quote, "Excuse me for making sure they could live another day without a monster devouring them from the inside out." End quote. Yeah.
Ouch.
That obviously feels like a slap in the face for Ziggy.
Also, I was a little confused. Nope, never mind. I was thinking the Stellarian was already in the Colossus body, and he's not. He was just hooking him up, so never mind.
It was just hooking him up.
Hooking him up. Yeah, that is a big slap in the face.
Yeah. And Ziggy like really hard pulls back and is just like, well, you can fucking leave and I'll finish the mission by myself.
Bye.
And Micah's like, no, it's our mission. Like I said it in a heated moment. It's not what I meant. And he won't leave the room. So he's like, I'm staying for this. So Micah ultimately takes charge of the situation by summoning a harp to speak Stellarian to the prisoner. And we find out that this Stellarian is technically a defector, but only because a different defector slaughtered their entire squad. And we find out the person that slaughtered their squad is the parental unit of Ziggy that Ziggy was sent to Earth to like track down, that he ultimately let go. And I'm like, how many fucking people did Daddy Zig like interact with? Because it seems like everybody
they run into is like, oh yeah, this guy. How many other Stellarians? It's like there's 5 of them,
right?
And they
like
all have interacted with Daddy Zig.
And the universe is big, right? So it's just odd that you would find all of these people and be like, oh hey, that's my daddy. Like, interesting. I hate that guy. He's a dirtbag.
Well, and just as a reminder, this is the same dirtbag that somehow found 2 mates on Earth, but somehow Ziggy can't fathom that he can be mated with someone who's not a Stellarian, even though he saw it happen and let him go because of it. 10,000 question marks?
10,000 question marks is a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like that comes to light, and Ziggy and Micah are kind of taking turns questioning this Stellarian, and Micah ends up asking, how did you survive? If your entire unit was slaughtered by this person, why aren't you also dead? And the Stellarian tells him, well, I saw what was happening and I fell to my knees. And that's apparently a big no-no for Stellarians because it's a sign of like submission. And the reason that this Stellarian did that was because he sympathized with Daddy Zig's perspective, if not the methods by which he went about doing so. Because essentially what he says is that Daddy Zig wanted to be creative and thought that the Stellarian like war perspective was not the right way.
Because they just want to color in coloring books, and we can have art as well as science. I just felt like, okay, for as little exposition as we really get in this plot, I felt like this diatribe about art went on for far too long.
Yeah, I felt like it just insisted upon itself, like war and peace and art and creation, life and death. And I'm just like, this is far too deep of a concept for this book to be trying to execute.
Well, and then we don't go back to it, I don't think. Like, we talk about it, Ziggy's like, no, I was made for battle. And this other guy's like, but you don't have to be. You could be made for, like, love and sensuality. And he's like, nope, battle. And then they just move on to the next thing.
Well, they do go back to it at the end because that's kind of the crux of, like, what happens in the end. So we'll get there when we get there.
Okay,
but, like,
you're right.
It introduces the concept that the Astrum Force ruling body of Stellaria, the implication is that they forbid non-war-like engagements, like sex, like art, like fun. So
joy.
I only really came to this conclusion as we were debriefing before we started recording, but like it must be that the penalty for engaging in those activities is death, because otherwise this plot doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think I just wish that had been introduced earlier on in the book, because we're at literally 52%, and for it to come up now as the problem just felt, I don't know, like she had the idea literally halfway through.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit aimless, because it's like we're going on bounties across the universe, and then you uncover this thing about like the insidious nature of your ruling body, which like I got spoilers for everybody, like all politics are bad. Like you gotta, and then they go in like this other direction. And I'm like, I'm not sure where we're ending.
Well, and we said this in the debrief too, but that doesn't quite feel like corruption. It feels like you don't like the culture you were raised in, which is political, but you can't call it corruption. Like, corruption implies that they're going against what the norm was, and they're not. It sounds like this is just always how it's been, and you don't like that. Also, when we're first introduced to Stellaria, Micah describes the buildings as like straight out of Candyland. You're going to tell me the buildings look like that, but they don't have architects or artists?
Yeah, where did the buildings come from?
Who's painting them bubblegum pink if you don't have art?
That's a great question. Maybe they don't see color.
Maybe they don't see, or maybe it's just the soldiers who can't be creative. I just needed more. And I know it's asking more from this book than what we're here for, but I just felt like you said, it insists upon itself, and it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it insists upon itself. But the story aspect of it is that this causes Ziggy to question like who he is a little bit more, because this defector Stellarian is essentially like, well, you were made for war, and now you're not doing a whole lot of warring. You're doing a whole lot of whoring. Am I right? And Zig's like, that's different in his internal monologue. And I think somewhat verbally. And the dude's like, is it different? Because it doesn't seem like it to me. So like, maybe you should check yourself before you wreck yourself in this whole, what are they called? Solar collisions? Stellar collisions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, stellar collisions. Solar collisions. Or that other weird name that Micah has, Invectus, that word that I can't remember.
That one. So anyway, they let the Stellarian go, and he star walks out of the room, leaving Ziggy and Micah together. Micah tries to apologize for what he said to Ziggy, but Ziggy is kind of insisting. He's like, I can take you back to Earth. You don't have to be here. Like, let's just go get your stuff. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we're fine. We can part ways.
Because I'm such a monster to you.
I'm such a monster. And Micah has to do kind of this weird, like, apology/pep talk thing. And he essentially makes the distinction that Ziggy and the Stellarian that they just let go are materially different, because Ziggy makes an effort to soothe the meat suits that he takes over so that it's not a scary process, whereas the other Stellarian was not doing that. He was just essentially killing the Kalas, and they knew it.
Yeah, I could feel every moment of it. And the Kalas are the ones that admit that. Like, this felt different. We felt calm with Ziggy, where the other one was just like terror and fear and pain.
Right, exactly. So Ziggy finally accepts the apology and accepts the fact that Micah doesn't see him as a monster, and they make up. Great.
Awesome.
So they talk a little bit more, and Micah ends up asking Ziggy why Ziggy kissed him that day on Earth, and Ziggy admits to Micah that was the first time that he wanted anything for himself. And so Micah asks him what would happen if Ziggy allowed himself to want more rather than just following orders. And that's when Ziggy tells us that that would be considered disloyal. And he says, quote, disloyal at best and a traitor at worst. And so that, I guess, kind of implies that there's like a really harsh punishment for being artsy and like having an individualistic desire in Stellaria.
Choosing something for yourself.
Yeah.
Also, I hadn't really noticed, but Ziggy does say in his internal monologue, but that's the only time he's kissed Micah. Like, they've had sex quite a few times, but he hasn't kissed him since then, because, like, kissing is the thing that's off limits here, as if he's a whore. Like, what?
A pretty woman, but aliens, I guess.
Yeah. I was like, okay. Weird line to die on, but all right.
So after this apology, they beam back to the ship, and it's here that Micah asks Ziggy to include his tentacles, his star tentacles, in their lovemaking. And so they go into the bedroom, and Ziggy agrees to this, but it's intriguing for him because it's something that he's never done before.
He's only ever used his tentacles to invade other people's bodies to kill them.
Yeah, this is a very different invasion of a body.
Oh, there was something I didn't like, and I noticed it in this part, but it happens a lot in this book, and I think it might lead to why the smut like didn't hit for me. They both do this thing where they will like, they have things they need to talk about. Like they kind of recovered, but not really. And then Micah just tries to make him feel better by moving into sex. And so they both kind of do this thing where they use sex to like not talk about their feelings. And that's just not super healthy. And it happens a lot. It's like every time they have sex, it's because they're avoiding talking about something. And it kind of kills the vibe for me.
Yeah, I get that. Like we've definitely had that complaint in other books. Like the Hades and Persephone retelling comes to mind for that.
Oh, God. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so this scene, it should on paper be exciting and the definition of not vanilla because it involves tentacles. It involves like male, like adventurous stuff, right? But it's not actually like it just kind of reads as vanilla. Like there's breeding talk and power play talk in this scene, and it is specific. It just, the lead up doesn't feel right because they are avoiding their emotions, and the execution of it feels a little bit pat almost. But I mean, on paper it's good. I enjoyed reading it. Like I had a good time. It just wasn't my favorite.
Exactly. I wasn't mad about it. We get the daddy talk. We skip the space part and just like straight to daddy. We get, like you said, kind of the breeding kink, which usually I hate, but I think because they're both physically male, I don't care because it's not that barefoot and pregnant thing.
Yeah.
I liked the bondage part with the tentacles. We get a little bit of that. It just felt, yeah, it was just very quick. But we get some of that like derogatory talk that I also don't really hate when it's consensual. Like it hits all the things I like. It's just missing something.
Yeah. And it honestly might be because they talk in like memes. And so
I think that takes me out of the moment.
Yeah. Well, it lessens a lot of the intimacy for me, like personally, because I don't talk like that in like my important moments. So it's just, it feels like they're doing a bit.
Exactly. Like one of the internal monologues that Micah has is the unhinged sex beast of my dreams. And I'm just like, why though?
Yeah.
And what's super annoying is that it's the insistent upon itself. Because like in the straightforward narration, it says, as if I was finally going to meet the unhinged sex beast I've been waiting for. And then the italics, the inner monologue, is that unhinged sex beast of my dreams. I'm like, yeah, you just told me that, bro. Like, I don't need it again.
Yeah, it's very
I don't
redundant.
think like that. Yeah, and I just don't. Obviously, I'm not a mind reader. I only know my own thoughts. But I don't think people actually think that way. And it's the meme talk. And I just don't like it.
It's the meme talk. So anyway, the next morning, they check in with each other, and Ziggy just wants to make sure that he didn't pressure Micah into doing something, and Micah assures him that that's all he wanted to do since the first time that he met Ziggy, and especially since the first time he saw Ziggy's tentacles. They both admit that they've been into each other for quite some time, almost like a lust at first sight situation, even back on Earth. But they do go so far as to say that it's changed now and they want something more, but they stop short of admitting to each other that they think they are mated, despite the fact that they've both told us internally that they know that that's the case.
This went on for so much. I mean, it went on for honestly exactly as long as I expected based on the front half of this book, but that length of time was too fucking long. Also, one thing I have to note, whenever they talk about the breeding kink, they use the word mpreg, like letter M, P-R-E-G, and I fucking hated it because I was like, this looks like a typo. I've never seen this word before. Just call it a breeding kink or impregnate. Like, just what is this mpreg? I know that's a thing, and our listeners have probably seen it, but I don't like it because it's not a word.
This is the first time that I've seen it, so maybe
Me
that
too.
makes me a dinosaur or something in terms of like internet speak. But like, yeah, not a fan.
No, just call it breeding, and he does. He's like, you want me to breed you? You just keep it there.
Yeah, keep it there. So anyway, as a part of this conversation, they both decide that they need to find out more about whether that Stellarian that they cornered in that rest stop, like, to see if that's true, right? Because he's the person that spoke the most directly, but they've gotten kind of intel about the regularity of defectors, this idea that the Stellarian government might be not as truthful as Ziggy once thought, that kind of thing. They've gotten that information from a number of different people at this point, so they want to confirm their suspicions. And to do that, they want to go to the planet that the Kala's aliens call home. So Kalas are, remember, the conjoined alien twin situation, physically conjoined, but we don't know how. Because this species are essentially galactic librarians and they collect knowledge. So Ziggy has Micah disable the tracking mechanisms on the ship and the cube so that Astrum Force can't know where they are, and they plot a course to the home of the Kalas.
I wish we learned more about the Kalas because I really like them in theory. Like, I like this galactic librarian thing. I like all the things we learn about them. I just cannot picture them, and it makes me struggle.
Yeah, agreed. It makes me spend far too much of my brain power kind of like making the scene make sense based on what I know and like filling in the gaps than I should have to.
Yes,
frankly.
Exactly.
So as they get close to this planet, Ziggy goes to enter into the Kala's meat suit that he has in his meat suit library. And this time Micah asks to see, like, to watch the process of him taking over the body. And Ziggy allows this. But as he's transitioning from human Ziggy to Kala's Ziggy, Micah asks to see his true form. And Ziggy does reveal himself again to Micah. And Micah is absolutely in awe because, again, Ziggy's true form is kind of like a galaxy, like a spiral galaxy. So he's starry and colory and misty and gorgeous. So when he takes over the Kalas and kind of gets situated, he's getting dressed and he's putting like all of this jewelry on. And Micah's like taking note of that. And he's like, man, you look pretty. I can't wait to fuck you, both of you. And Ziggy's like, that's great. We should talk about what role we're going to play here because you're going to have to be my bodyguard on this planet. And Micah's like, yeah, cool. Heard. Why? And he doesn't get a good answer before they exit the ship and are greeted by a sea of cheering crowds. And we learn that Ziggy's chosen Kala's meat suit are the rulers of Kalas.
Which, okay, I'm sorry. Listen, I know we're not here for the logic, but if you're a body snatcher and you're here to like get intel and get bounties, why would you pick the leaders? It's like choosing David Bowie. Like, why would you pick someone in the focal point of a culture? How would you do your job? Why would you pick that? Because you chose this.
Yeah.
Ziggy.
Yeah, and we do learn that we actually don't learn if Ziggy was a part of the actual attack, but we learn that the reason that he has these bodies is because their convoy was attacked and he was able to take over their bodies. And that makes it sound like you attacked them and like stole their bodies on purpose. So Come on, dude.
Because no one else stole them if you were with other Stellarians. Like, and also you've just been missing for how many years with the rulers? Like,
and nobody has a follow-up question? Okay.
No, you come back and they're like, woo, like, did time just go into stasis when you left? I don't understand. I get it for the drama, but like, it doesn't make no sense.
Yeah, and that's really where I started to have like a moral crisis. I was like, this is fucked up. Like, you actively participated in like political espionage by taking over these kings and erasing their consciousness so that you could have their meat suit bodies. Like,
and like, who's running the country? Like, are you running the country? Because that's not fair. Like, you're talking about your politics being corrupt. Like, this is fucked up, bro.
Well, so speaking of who's running the country / planet, they're immediately greeted before the sea of people by this guy named Nulltech. And I say guy, but like, it is male presenting, but remember there's two of them because they're Kalas. So Nulltech both of them are named Noltek, I guess. And Noltek has been running the country/planet for Ziggy in Ziggy's absence. And he greets them very warmly and says, we're so glad that you're back. And we learned that the Kalas that rule this planet, they're called Chuku and Furjan. I'm just going to call them Ziggy.
Yep.
But the kings that Ziggy took over, we're going on a royal kind of quest to find more knowledge to add to their library. And their home planet doesn't know that they essentially died on that trip.
They super died. They died. They dead.
They did. They're not coming back. So they're greeted by Noltek, and Noltek is like, oh, great. And your bodyguard? I don't understand this. And so that's when Ziggy's like, oh, yes, we were attacked and the rest of the people died. But, you know, this guy Micah saved me and he's very powerful. And he's also my mate, because they also have that concept on this planet. And Noltek's like, that's fantastic. Shall I prepare a wedding ceremony? And Ziggy's like, yep, please do that. But we're going to go straight to the knowledge because, you know, we got to share the stuff that we learned. And this whole time, Mike is like reeling internally, which was kind of funny to watch.
It was funny to watch because he left Earth by leaving a note saying that he was going to go get space married, and now he gets to get space married, but they still haven't had the whole like mate conversation yet amongst themselves, and now they're going to have a legitimate space wedding. And what's his name, Noltek, is also like,
Noltek,
is it time for some heirs to the throne? And Mike is just like, I'm sorry, what?
Excuse me. Yeah. I was so excited because like in this conversation, Noltek's like, oh my gosh, it would be my pleasure to plan this wedding. And Ziggy's like, yep. And of course, spare no expense. And I'm like, this is going to be rad. I'm so here for an alien wedding. And then we don't get to do that.
I wanted the alien cue the ball scene. It made up for the moral quandary I had of him taking over the kings. And then we just didn't even get the payout.
We don't get the payoff. Yeah. So I was very upset about that. Beyond the fact that like we have this opportunity to have a space wedding, like Micah said, he's like in the beginning, he's going off to get space married. And then we never actually see that happen. And I really wanted to.
Me too. And it kind of comes back at the end where like, we'll get back to it, but like Micah's family in the epilogue and like, ugh, give me the space wedding. God damn it.
I know. So anyway, Ziggy and Micah go directly to the knowledge, which is what they call their like digital library that they collect all of this information in on Kalas. And it's not just information on Kalas. Obviously, it's information about the entire galaxy. And so they are particularly looking for information about Stellaria. And so they look up the coordinates of the planet. And what they find is pretty disturbing because they immediately encounter an interview with a rebel Stellarian. And this Stellarian tells them through this interview that the Astrum Force took over Stellaria by force as a product of a civil war that happened hundreds of years ago and has actively participated in revising history about what Stellarians are, what they do, and what their purpose is. So this is kind of tying back to that defector conversation of like, why can't you be for art and war? Well, turns out because the Astrum Force wants you to be for war.
Which, fine. I'm glad we got some more information because I was afraid we were going to go on this mission and just be like, oh, yes, because it's bad. And like, I'm still not super satisfied, but I'm satisfied enough for the purposes of this story.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about it too hard.
No.
So beyond that specific cover up, they're also covering up the fact that all of these rebels that decided that they didn't want to follow the Astrum Force's like edicts are actually living on the moons of Stellaria, unbeknownst to Ziggy and the rest of the general population of Stellaria.
Where did you think they were? Okay.
So I had the immediate question of like, how do you not know that there's people living on your moon when you drive past it every morning? But we get a good answer to that and I'm satisfied. So
I had the exact same journey with that where I was like, I'm sorry, you cannot convince me. And then they did. So I was like, all right.
Okay, you convinced me. I take it back.
I take it back.
So this is especially upsetting to Ziggy because we learned at some point that his other parent, not the one that was a dickbag on Earth and apparently was a dickbag with a lot of other people that they run into. No, the like more motherly version of a parent was killed in that rebellion. And he was always given to understand that that was because there was a foreign invading force, not an internal war that was the cause of that person's death.
Interesting.
So this causes Ziggy to kind of check out of the rest of the research. But Mike is like, look, you stay here. I've got you. Do some breathing exercises. I need to go find out more information and then we can go. And so that's what happens.
I liked the breathing exercises thing.
I did too. I thought that was really cute, especially because like Ziggy, for the most part, kind of wears the pants. And Mike is like, no, I've done this before.
Let me help. Follow this. I'm going to take over now.
Yeah. I like that. So they go back to the royal sleeping chambers and they get down to the business of fucking. And this is where we learn that Kalas have fangs also.
Because of course they do. And like, we love a good vampire kink, but like, I just wish I knew what these things looked like.
I know. Like I have so many questions.
And how did you not notice until now? I mean, they're tiny. They're baby fangs.
That's a great question. Yeah, but still. So this situation obviously is a threesome, but that's a bit of a misnomer. So, but we'll get into the details.
I do want to say just on the fangs thing, because it did make me laugh because of who we are. Ziggy says something like, you could call them fangs. Other vessels of mine have much larger canines, but I suppose these would be sharp enough to break the skin if you're into that sort of thing. And I was like, we're all into that sort of thing.
I know. I read that and I was like, oh, but I am.
Oh, but you have no idea.
Yeah. So this scene is obviously a threesome because the Kalas are two, even though they're physically connected. And then there's Micah. There's also tentacles in this, but they are just used to restrain Micah. And so the Kalases end up double penetrating Micah, which I thought was going to be a little bit more interesting than it actually turns out to be, because they just treat it like it's a foregone conclusion. Like I feel like we've read so many scenes before where there's like a lot of preparation and like warming up, and they just go for it here.
Yeah, which took a lot of it. It took me out of the fantasy, which is something we keep talking about in all of these sex scenes, that they do just go for it. And we do get the one line fixer of like, we got it with the tentacles, we get it with like Ziggy in different spaces, that he like self lubricates somehow magically, and cool. I still want more
of
like
the tentacles.
it's from the tentacles, but like,
yeah,
they start to talk about it like, oh, are you more excited about having two dicks or the fact that it'll be twins? But like, it's not twins, it's just you. And then they just like do it and it's wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, and it's not even particularly like adventurous. Like I thought for sure we were gonna get a spit roasting scene here, and
yeah, because how could we not?
How can you not?
You are ripe with power, and I'm mad about it. I wanted the spit roasting scene.
Yeah, I did too. So they do the thing. There's a lot more breeding conversation. They come to fruition and they fall asleep. And then they wake up to screaming, which was a big change of pace for this book.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to happen at solidly 80% of the book. And I was like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah. And they realize pretty quickly that Kalas is under attack from Stellarians. I wonder how that happened.
There's no way to know.
Yeah. And Ziggy's trying to get Micah to leave, right? Because he's like, we can star hop back to the ship and then we can just go. But Micah's like, no, dude, you're their kings. Like, that would be really fucked up. You took over their kings and now you're just going to leave them to their fate, which I appreciated him saying it just like that.
Yes, someone needed to say it, and I'm glad it was said, because that's what I've been wondering this whole time.
Same. So Micah convinces Ziggy to stay and fight, which they do. Micah ends up using his nanobots, that implant that we kind of saw work for a shield earlier. He does that around the entire knowledge building, and Ziggy like helps herd people of the city into the knowledge, so they're effectively protected from this attack. And while everybody else is safe, they kind of go off to fight the Stellarians. So they run back to their ship and they take off. And the fighting is over. I'm going to read you the line because I was a little bit disappointed on how lackluster, for lack of a better term, the end of this battle was.
Yes.
So before they get onto the ship, it's worth noting that Ziggy gives the Khalis bodies back to the people by just leaving them in a field to make them look like they fell in battle. So he no longer has the king's body. Fine. But the line for them escaping is, quote, "After Micah gave them an elaborate mausoleum-style shield he swore that would hold, I left him at the helm while I took to the Kalanesian sky, eliminating any Stellarian still attempting to rid the galaxies of priceless knowledge." And that's it. That's literally the only line about how they eliminated the Stellarians that were attacking this planet.
And I solidly turned the page and thought we were going to get more. And I was like, okay, you built up this whole attack and battle, and that's all we get. And I understand that Ziggy is powerful. Fine. But if he is powerful, then aren't the other Stellarians powerful? And this is the second time he's just wiped out a whole bunch of them without breaking a sweat. Like, you gave me all this buildup, and that's how you're gonna end it? How? Okay.
Like, are we under attack or not?
Right.
Are the stakes high or not?
Because you put everyone in the library, essentially, to save them all, and then you just go and wipe them all out. Like, why did you even have to clear the streets? Just do that. If you could just wipe them out, just do that. Also, just go to Solaria and wipe out the council. Like, if you can just do that so easily, I don't understand why you have any problems.
Right. Like, this seems like a pretty solvable problem.
Yeah, and yet...
Speaking of a solvable problem, as Ziggy and Micah are kind of on their spaceship and leaving Callias, or it doesn't matter. As Ziggy and Micah are leaving the planet in their spaceship, Ziggy gets back into his Ziggy Stardust meat suit, right? But then they have this weird conversation where Ziggy says that his meat suit is actually a farm boy from the Midwest, and he found him dying in a gutter and like gave him a nice death. And that's where the meat suit came from. I for sure thought that he stole Ziggy Stardust's body.
I thought that too, and I was really confused. And I think again, as with many things in this book, it's a combination of skimming. I'll take some ownership, and also just poor execution, because we get like 6 paragraphs on how he went to Earth and saw a Ziggy Stardust concert and like fell in love, and then he was Ziggy Stardust, where it turns out he just took the name. But I thought he was been walking around as David Bowie this entire time.
Same. And I was picturing David Bowie as the character.
Me too.
Ziggy most of the time.
Yeah. And now it's just some farm boy, which makes more sense than him being David Bowie, because see part 1, that didn't make sense to me, how like no one noticed that this was just Bowie.
Right.
But then, like, I don't need the scene of him going to the concert. Just tell me that he heard this name and liked it. And he also likes Bowie, fine. But, like, just say that he likes it. Like, you confused me in the way you wrote this. And I clearly didn't read it closely enough. So I'm only going to take half credit for messing that up.
Yeah, I'm going to take half credit for that, too.
Because that could have been in one paragraph, right? Like, I went to this concert and then I walked outside. The concert was in Iowa. And then there was this dying farm boy. Boom. Ziggy Stardust was born.
Wham bam. Thank you, Mr. Ma'am.
Yeah.
Anyway. So they continue to talk about the act of taking over another vessel, and Micah and Ziggy explore the possibility of Ziggy being inside Micah, not in a biblical sexual way, but for him to like share Micah's body without killing Micah, essentially. And Ziggy says that he thinks that it's possible, but he's never done it before, and so he would be afraid to try it with Micah. Fine.
In case he kills him. I mean, that's a safe thing to be concerned about.
Yeah, could be. So they plot a course for Stellaria because they want to check out these moons and see if somebody's there, like these rebels.
If this is true.
As they near the moons, Micah asks Ziggy not to wear his armor when they land because he has a suspicion that he's not sharing with Ziggy that might rub people the wrong way and they might see Ziggy as an invader rather than like an income and peace situation.
Smart.
He's not sharing everything that he learned about in the knowledge with Ziggy. And he tells us internally that it's because he thinks that Ziggy needs to find out for himself. Otherwise, he won't go. But Ziggy clearly picks up on the fact that Micah's keeping something from him. He ends up not minding, though, or pushing Micah about it because he realizes that Micah's doing what he thinks is best for Ziggy and protecting him, which is a new thing that Ziggy's never had. And so he's kind of enjoying that feeling of having somebody look out for him.
This is one of those miscommunication tropes that it doesn't bother me as much, mostly because I'm not super invested in this story, but I'm like, all right, fine. He's got to learn it for himself. I'm okay with this.
Yeah. So they land on the moon, but before they get out of the spaceship to go investigate, they talk about how the tether that Micah has with Ziggy's cube can easily be undone. But both of them insist that it must stay, and they finally admit that they are each other's quote end game. And Micah takes this to mean that they're space engaged, so they're space fiancés now.
This is a space proposal.
Yeah,
so stupid. It's things like that that's so dumb, but I liked it. Like I was okay with the space engaged, space fiancés. Like it's fine.
I was okay with it too. It was just so camp and stupid. Like
exactly.
I was here for it.
Exactly. I liked it. I was like, this is great. Whatever you say, space fiance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they exit the ship and Ziggy's in the dark about what the plan is, but Micah assures him that he's in charge and he's got it handled. So he takes out that harp that he had used to communicate with the Stellarian before and he strings the notes that are exactly what Ziggy's resonance sound is. And Ziggy is like floored. He sees this as a confirmation that Micah is actually his resonance because he's found a way to completely replicate that sound. And Micah says as much. He's like, I can't make it myself, but this will have to do. And so I think this is effectively the first time that they're admitting to each other that they're mates.
Yeah. I'm so glad we finally get the actual conversation in this book. But I was like, yep.
I know.
Go just a little bit further.
Yeah, exactly. Micah does reveal that there was a secondary reason why he did this, and that was to summon the specific people from the rebel camps. And we learned that these rebel camps are actually underground, which is why nobody's aware of them when you just drive past these moons on your way to work. They're subterranean. Fine.
Which I liked.
I believe that.
That makes sense to me. I also like there's a line, I just had it, but I turned the page. Where I don't even remember who's talking. I think Ziggy. Okay, it's from Ziggy's perspective. And Micah kind of says that, they're subterranean. Got it. And Ziggy's inner monologue is, I might have a competency kink. And I'm like, is that a kink or do we just like smart people? Competency is not the same as intelligence.
Right.
I think we all have a competency kink. Like, I don't think we can call it a kink. I don't know. It's fine.
I guess we'll find out. So they're soon joined by two other Stellarians. And it's a little bit unclear to me what body these two are in, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But it also seemed to me that these are the two Stellarians that they met on that Zoolander planet.
That's what I thought.
Because at least one of them is described as the would-be kidnapper. And I have to assume that the other one, because they kind of recognize them, like, is the other one that they were talking about. But I don't understand why Ziggy didn't realize who these people were the first time.
That's the problem with body snatching, man. I don't know.
I know. Anyway, the reason that this is important is because not the would-be kidnapper, but the other one is a Stellarian named Braun, and we learn that this is the parental unit that Ziggy thought died in the rebellion all of those years ago.
And has been missing.
So that's Braun, and Honor is their partner who tried to kidnap Micah from Zoolander.
Zoolander.
I hope I'm doing a good job explaining all of this.
I think you are doing as good of a job as you possibly can, given this chaos.
Yeah, it's a little chaotic down here.
Yeah, you're doing great.
They go from this family reunion where Ziggy's like reeling and is just like, I don't understand. And then they go immediately into talking about, okay, how do we overthrow the Astrum Force? And Mike is asking these questions about, like, you know, can you take over a vessel without like killing it? And Braun and Honor are just like, yeah, dude, that's what we were supposed to do. How do you think humans became conscious from apes? Like, we did that shit. And I'm just like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about right now. And also, I was a little offended by that as a human. Rude.
Well, different timelines, but still.
Rude.
Braun goes so far as to say at some point, quote, "It actually goes against our nature to take over completely. Stellarians are meant to be a communal species, not a conquering one," end quote. Which is kind of wild. So apparently they're supposed to be parasite adjacent.
Like a
not fully
symbiotic instead of just a parasite?
Yeah, symbiotic. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was looking for.
You got there. Also, because I'm looking at this page, the only thing Micah eats this entire book is the corpus spongiosum. And like, bro, I know you like it, but I'm saying bro a lot in this episode. I don't know why. You feed him different things.
Yeah. So they go on to talk about how it's weird that Ziggy is the only mercenary in Astrum Force because he's not actually a soldier, right? And Ziggy always chalked it up to not coming from like a prestigious family and like serving the Astrum Force in whatever capacity that they would allow. But his parental, Braun, is like, think about it a different way. Like, you came from two rebels and they're using you as an experiment to see if you can be completely controlled with still having that parentage. And Ziggy feels used, betrayed. His entire world is turned upside down. All of those feelings.
I did like that. This is where kind of the corruption in the Astrum Force, I was like, all right, okay.
Yeah. They go on to suggest that this is why Ziggy is the correct person to infiltrate the Astrum Force and, quote, blow it up completely. And I'm just like, we went from family reunion to let's have like a complete overthrow of the Astrum Force in like no time flat.
Also, it felt a little bit like, okay, Braun is saying that Ziggy was the experiment to see if he'd be controlled, but it also sounds like you planted your child in there on purpose. That way you would have it in later. Like, you're both experimenting on this person.
Yeah, it does feel like both sides are using Ziggy, and Ziggy's just like along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I'm also I became like this is where it starts getting a little bit Scooby-Doo, because like they're having this conversation and then they're talking about like, let's infiltrate the Astrum Force, and then they're like, yeah, so request an audience. And I'm like, what are you going to do with an audience? And then before we even get past that question, Micah's like, yeah, Ziggy, you can join me in my body as a symbiotic thing that we were just talking about. You're definitely going to figure out first time and not kill me. No, don't worry about it. And then we can go in together and do this thing. And I'm still like, what is the plan though?
I know,
you just going to kill them all?
Because even when you get there, what are you going to do? And when you
and that's what I wasn't clear about.
Yeah, and even if your plan is to kill them all because he just likes to, that's his answer to everything, then what?
Right. I wish I don't know. I mean, they end up kind of doing both, but I'm just like, I realized that you were trying to like create tension by not telling your audience everything, but I was just a little bit like, I felt like I was being dragged along into this scene.
Exactly, and I didn't like that. There's other ways to do that. Also, you have this whole rebel army, and you're telling me they don't have a plan. Like, I just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they really don't have a plan because they do that. So Ziggy joins Micah in Micah's body, and they wear Ziggy's armor to the Astrum Force, and they show up, and they figure it out, and then they just wing this conversation that they have with Astrum Force because Ziggy plays it off as like, oh yeah, I took over my mate's body because it turns out that he was just a tool and like I didn't really need him, and the commander's just like, that's awesome, yeah. And then they like invite him into a back room, which was not part of the plan. I'm like, what was the plan? Anyway.
I can't. I can't. I'm just the whole inviting Ziggy into Micah's body also just goes like pretty seamlessly. It's just, you made all of this shit up as you went, and it's fine. It worked.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But so anyway, like I said, they show up, they're coordinated. Ziggy gives this report to the Astrum Force, and they're like, yes, you've proved your loyalty by killing your mate. Come with us to our secret clubhouse. And Ziggy's like, sure. Awesome. So they go into like the back council room, and they're debriefing and talking about like the next mission, and it has to do with Earth. And so Ziggy offers like, or Micah, I guess, in their shared body offers, oh yeah, I can share the intel that I have on Earth with you if I can hook my cube up to whatever system it is that you've got there. And so he does that, but instead of sharing the intel that he had about Earth, he blasts the interviews that they got from the knowledge with the rebel Stellarians across Stellaria to every other Stellarian, so that they have the information now, I guess, to know that their regime is lying to them.
Which I kind of like that. I always like in movies like that tech takeover, and we're going to show this thing under the force permission of the government. But I think the feeling of being dragged along to get to this point and the chaos leading up to it kind of undermined it a little bit.
Yeah, I just wasn't clear about what was going to happen. Well, and the practical side of me was just like, how do you know they're not going to treat it like spam, right? Like if a number that I don't know texts me, I don't even read the text, I just delete
exactly.
it. Like
exactly.
You're going to send this video clip to like 100 people. How do you know they're going to like watch it?
Right. Well, and it feels like,
how do you know believe it?
Feels like the process of a rebellion, like where you start, laying the groundwork and undermining the leaders, not the end all be all of the rebellion.
Right. Yeah. They treated this almost like a foregone conclusion of like, well, we're going to send this video and everybody's going to believe it at face value, just like we did. And then you're going to have no power.
Which like, that's not quite how an overthrow works. Look at our country.
Right. And so I had to willfully suspend my disbelief.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, sure. Also, I'm still not convinced that there's more than 12 Stellarians. So,
yeah, that's fair. That's super fair. So this act of defiance obviously makes the Astrum Force very upset. And so Ziggy yeets himself out of Micah's body and then puts Micah to sleep. And at first I was like, that seems like a really dangerous thing to do. But I think what happened was that the Astrum Force like commander people thought that Ziggy killed Micah. So Ziggy wanted to protect Micah by making Micah look dead.
Yeah, that's what I assumed too. But if this were a more serious book, I feel like one of them would have tried to take that body, and that would have been really dark because he's not dead.
Yeah, exactly. So Micah, we see this through Micah's perspective, and he passes out. And then we just get like a very short chapter from Ziggy that's just kill in different ways on the page, which was
fine.
Okay. Gonna drive right past that. And when Micah wakes up, he doesn't see Ziggy anywhere. He does see a lot of gore from the rest of the Stellarians around him. And he's like hoping and praying that he doesn't recognize Ziggy. I'm going to willfully suspend my disbelief there and just assume that he would know when he saw it.
Right, because it's like just space dust. So you would just recognize his space dust? Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Got it.
So it doesn't take long for Micah to realize that he's not alone, and the head Astrum Stellarium Force guy is still alive, and he engages Micah in battle. So they have a bit of back and forth during this fight, because the Stellarian is basically using his camouflage as an advantage and taunting Micah, and Micah's trying to get him to come out and fight like a real man, like not a coward or whatever.
Like a real man. I'm a real boy.
Right. The Astrum Force Stellarian tries to make Micah fall asleep by using his like somno powers, but Micah fashions like a nanobot shield around his head, and that causes it produces like some kind of stimulation that keeps him alive, and so he combats that. And then he successfully gets under this guy's skin by telling him that, like, you know, he's a tech wizard and your worst nightmare. And this causes the dude to charge from where he's hiding and allow Micah to engage him in battle and then cut him to
schmiverines.
And that's the end. And that's the end of the Astrum Force for good.
For good. Which was also pretty abrupt.
But the sad part of this is that Micah doesn't feel Ziggy anymore, and he suspects that Ziggy is dead, though he hasn't seen his body anywhere, and so he can't confirm it. When he goes outside of the council chambers, he's met by Braun and Honor and a couple of other people, and there's like Stellarians celebrating around them, and like we're given to understand that that means the rebellion was successful, I guess.
And it's fine now. It's fine.
So Micah tells them that Ziggy fought off the Stellarian Astrum Force people and died in battle. But Braun is like, no, he's never left you. He's still with you. And so Ziggy, like Micah feels a part of Ziggy inside of him, I guess, and like calls Ziggy back, and his Stardust essence reforms, kind of. Unclear.
Yeah. This is where I was saying in the debrief that I was confused, because Braun and Honor appear and are like consoling Micah, and Honor says, "We didn't simply appear on this balcony by coincidence, Micah. I was following my resonance." They pointed at my chest, our resonance. And this is where I was like, are you mated to your mate's mom's parental's spouse? I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, I had that thought too, because like when they first landed on the moon, they made the resonance sound back, and I was like, is this a family thing, or do I misunderstand what a resonance is?
I know, because I thought it was a mate thing, so I was really confused, and also I think I missed that part. So then when I got Honor saying I followed our resonance, I was like, what are you telling me here?
Yeah. I don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I can't.
And like, I kind of get it, because there's like, basically, and correct me, there's like this little piece of Ziggy still in Micah, and that was making the resonance that they could follow. And so, yeah, with their like mate bond, Micah calls him back, like you said. I guess.
But I think Ziggy did die, and so I think like just his body parts, I guess, came back together, because part of him was still in Micah, and then the rest of his consciousness could like reform. Like, I have so many technical questions about what happened that makes me unable to move past it.
Yeah, this being the last chapter really fucked me up. I was like,
yeah.
I just didn't need this. Okay, just have him be MIA for a couple pages and then just like appear.
Right. Or like have him like being celebrated by the people in the street or whatever, or like going to find Bron, something. It was just a little bit bizarre. I have so many more questions. I wish I didn't have these questions.
Exactly. And that is where it felt kind of Scooby-Doo. It's like, this would usually be fine in a book, but it was like everyone understood what was happening except for me, and I don't appreciate that.
Yeah. Everybody else was just like, yeah, this is exactly how it works. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, I'm very worried about it.
Because even Mike is like, oh, yes, of course. I'm like,
that makes
no.
sense.
What?
No.
Okay.
Anyway, so Ziggy didn't die and they live happily ever after. And that's actually where the book ends, except we do get an epilogue. So this epilogue is a wild ride. It comprises of two things. The first one is a somnophilia scene, where Micah is asleep and Ziggy is fucking him and actively waking him up and sending him back to sleep, like during that process. If you're into that.
So I was trying to decide if I was into this, and to be clear, they like had this conversation earlier and Micah gave explicit consent, and they had kind of done this before also, and like, so the consent part is fine. I think what I don't like about it is because Micah's asleep, it's so one-sided that it's boring. Like he's just like fucking a puppet. It's like we don't get the combo of the two of them, and I was just like, I'm just reading about Ziggy masturbating with his body, and that didn't do it for me.
Yeah, same. This gets a little bit into like the free use kind of kink category for me, and like that's just not my jam.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Like it just felt like very one-sided, and like I get that Micah is into it and like is enjoying it, but since we don't see it, I don't know, it just felt a little bit like meh for me.
Yeah, it just feels like boring. I mean, just seeing it from all of the narrative we get is just like, and I'm pounding into his hole and he was sleeping. And then I pounded into his hole and he was sleeping. And I was just like, okay.
Okay, just more of this? Okay, great.
And I think that's okay. Consent, great. Somnophilia, do whatever you want. I think what I don't like about somnophilia is, maybe this sounds greedy, but like if we're gonna have sex, I want to enjoy it. And if I'm asleep, I don't get to enjoy it. Obviously, it's just not my kink. That. I'm not kink shaming. Yeah. Like I don't have a problem with it. It's just, it feels boring to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. So the second thing that's in this epilogue is a discussion from the Earth family that Micah has, because remember, he just kind of up and left. And so he gets his phone back and figures out how to like text with people on Earth, despite the fact that he's galaxies away.
Well, they're like going to Earth.
They might be going to Earth.
I think they're okay. My head, and I was especially, I hard skim epilogues for sure, especially when I don't really care. But there's a line. Okay, unfortunately, the moment the Lodger 79 got within range of Earthlink cell service, both our phones. So it's like they entered the atmosphere and now their phones work.
Got it. Okay, so they are going back to Earth, and that's why their phones
remember why they're going back to Earth. I don't know if we're told. I was taken aback by now we're seeing text messages on the page, which hasn't happened in the entire rest of the book, and I didn't like that. Also, the names of people were like unnecessary. I hated this epilogue. Also, it's New Year's Eve for some reason.
I don't know why it's New Year's Eve, but also the names of people, like I was not following this conversation at all. But the gist of it is that Micah's brother is getting married, and so they are invited to the marriage ceremony, and they're excited about that.
Sure.
Yeah. I just like, this was fine. It was a fine epilogue. It just felt like a bonus scene more than anything else. And that's where the book ends.
Yep. Just don't have a whole lot to say.
Yeah, so let's get into our ratings, shall we?
Okay. Yep, shall. Okay.
So Liz, how do we rate The Spice?
We both rated The Spice a 3 because we had feelings.
Besides the DP, like the sex was kind of tame, if I'm honest.
Okay, I had the exact same thought, and I was a little afraid to say that because I could picture your face being like, what else could you possibly want? Because we get like the consensual non-consent, we get like the sleepy somnophilia, like we get the alien two bodies, and we get the tentacles, but like it all felt super vanilla. Like it's just because and maybe this is because we don't read a lot of male romance, but he's just always fucking him in the ass. Like they don't do anything else.
Well, and there's not a terrible amount of oral. Like there's one or two scenes, and it's at the beginning. And like I thought, especially with like the twins, we would get like spit roasting or something.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Or like with the tentacles, like this opportunities are ripe for it. And there's also never like the teasing aspect of it. It's always just like the we're going straight into it kind of thing. So I feel like that's what contributed to it for me.
Yeah, and there were also some things that just didn't do it for me, mostly because this is going to sound so
straight,
but like there were things that she would write that I'm like, is that I'm not going to guess at her sexuality, but like, is this a woman's viewpoint? She does have I think they. Is this author's viewpoint of male sex, or is this how males have sex? Because she talks about them rubbing their dicks together a lot, and I'm like, is that a thing? That guys
that
do?
felt a lot like the scissoring thing that lesbians supposedly do. I'm like, there's
that
no fucking way to do
that. Exactly. That every time he would talk about like he rubbed his dick along mine, I was like, and did that do it for you?
How did that make you feel? Because I'm like, not getting a whole lot.
Yeah, so I mean, like the scenes, they were like right on the edge of being really great, but like you said, it was ripe with opportunity, and we just didn't use the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think so. This is the second book we've read by Rochelle, and I think it's just her style that doesn't do it for us. Because we had this similar complaint for Song of Saints and Swans, where the scenes were good but relatively vanilla, and also like weirdly short, like no buildup.
Yeah, there's no buildup. It's like they go from, okay, we're in bed, to like now we're fucking, to like now we're orgasming, and now we're sleeping.
Right. And there's like no transition.
Like, yeah. And stuff. I think that's exactly it. I think it's just her style. And it's fine. Yeah. It's not bad smut. It's a little boring. It's a little redundant, which is shocking.
It's a little redundant. Yeah. No, totally. I'm with you.
And part of me was like, am I just becoming numb to smut? But no, I don't think so.
Am I just becoming desensitized to it? No, you just have a high bar. Honestly, the bar for me is A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, and it falls far short,
which is upsetting because I thought, because Ziggy is a body snatcher and we have endless bodies he can have sex in, that it could be very similar to Lady of Rooksgrave Manor with all of the monsters,
right?
But it's just not.
Yeah, cool. So that brings us to writing style. We rated it a 3, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that was predominantly because of the asides and the chat speak.
Yep.
Yeah.
It technically, there was nothing wrong. Like, there were no typos. It was fine. It was well formatted. It was just the chat speak. I fucking hated so many asides. I don't need that many asides. You're telling me a first person narrative. I don't also need to then hear your thoughts.
Yeah. No notes. Totally agree. So then quality of storytelling, we have a bit of disagreement here. So
I think I was feeling generous.
Okay. That explains it. I'm feeling not generous.
So Katie rated it 2. I rated it a 3. I think it's probably a 2. I think when I was rating it, I was like, okay, within the first chapter, I knew we weren't here for story. So knowing that I wasn't here for story, it's fine. But if I take out the generous side, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, the story we get, take all of that away, remove it all, and then you can have your 3 back. Because you gave us the story, I am going to meet you at the 2. Because what?
Yeah, what the fuck? I mean, and it's fine. Like, I know this was like a sci-fi camp, like, adventure, and I'm here for that. I just there were a couple of things that I had hard questions about, and that took me out of the fantasy. And I just it could have, and it didn't need to be a lot, right? It could have just been like one-line fixers, and that would have made it okay in my brain. I just like it made it clunky to experience.
Yeah, like, describe the Kalas for me. The fact that I can't picture this creature that you've created in your alien story really ruins it for me, because now your whole DP scene doesn't make sense because I don't know what these things look like besides having emoji faces. And, like, it says the alien emoji face, which I think is that gray cliche alien face, but that's not what I picture. I picture, like, anime face eyes.
Right. Yeah,
or like a yellow smiley face, and like that's not my kink, so
yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean that's why I think 2 is appropriate. Fair. But I mean that said,
say
do
it.
We
I
recommend?
Like say it. We do.
Do we recommend this book?
We do recommend this book. I did. Okay, so yes, but so it's one of those yeses with an asterisk. I would recommend it to someone who just wants like this is the perfect beach read. Like, if you want some pretty approachable spice, because even though it's kind of adventurous, it's still pretty vanilla. Like, it's not hardcore. Like, I would feel pretty like, oh, you're into spice, read this, and you like sci-fi, go for it. There's no story, and I would tell people that. Also, I had said at the end of part 1 that I might be open to reading the second book. I don't really know if I need to. I think I got it. Like, it's a yes, but it's not on my TBR to continue the series.
No, same.
But it was fun. It was the perfect book to start, because hi, I'm a teacher. It was the perfect book to start my summer vacation with. It was a great like brain break. I didn't have to think about it, except for the things that I didn't want to think about that it made me think about. Hence that 2 on storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, big that. So yeah, yes, with caveats, but that's it. We did it. Those are our thoughts on Earth Boys Are Easy by Rochelle. Thank you, as always, for joining us on this journey. Let us know what you thought on the socials. You can find us on TikTok and Goodreads at Spice Readers Pod. And if you like our podcast, you know that you can find more over on our Patreon, where we release Patreon exclusive episodes on our off weeks. And if you really, really like us, drop us a review wherever you listen. But until next time, we'll see ya. Bye, y'all.
Bye.